Hello, viewers. You are very welcome to today's session on transforming time with Samaritan strategy that throws light on the salient issues of life. My name is Chiri Ruben. Over the past few weeks, we've been talking about worldviews. Last week, we had our first review session on worldviews, and it was a great time of inspiration and enlightenment with Dr. Chris. Today, we are very happy and humble to have Dr. Chris to lead in our discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Ruben, good to see you.
Very happy that we'll have a great time today. So, last week we were talking about the power of stories, how worldviews are like frames of glasses that shape the way we see the world, that shape how we think, how we act, how we perceive reality, to the extent that it affects even the way we see and work in every sector of our lives, whether it's politics, it's economics, it's medicine, health, every sector. Worldviews greatly influence because these are people who have this insight about how they perceive reality. So if you have a worldview like an animistic mindset, a secularist mindset, you go to these sectors of life with these views and you impact them with the very values that these worldviews reflect. And so if you have a worldview that says that in the health sector, you're supposed to treat patients in this way, that our biblical worldview says that humans are created in the image of God. So you see the humans as someone who is very valuable, someone of immeasurable worth. So you regard the person and that changes how you see the person. If you have an animistic worldview, that changes your perception of how you treat people. You treat people anyhow. If you have a secularist worldview, you see people and you treat them anyhow. It goes into politics, into economics, where bribery and corruption are very, very evidential. So we said that worldviews greatly influence development in our lives, in the lives of society, in the lives of our nation, and even the continent, and that our ideas have consequences. In Galatians 6 verse 7, the Bible says, a man reaps what he sows. Right. Yes. So that we've established that these worldviews are very, very, very important. They are very critical in all areas of our lives. And Africa as a continent, if we narrow down, has all these worldviews at play. And that is very evident that our continent is very blessed with rich natural resources. And yet we see that Africa is, in fact, the poorest continent that we see. And most of the time we seek monetary assistance from foreign aids and all these people. Meanwhile, we are very religious. What is the real issue? How do we mitigate the root of poverty in our continent, despite all these resources that we have?
Well, thank you so much, Ruben. Well, that's why the topic and the discussion is the power story. The power story clearly demonstrates the type of stories that you have grown up with, educated with, or the life stories that have been told. For example, in Africa, where we are told that, even though we believe in God, and yet people, when they are discussing about their roots, where they have come from, their ancestry, some will make a link with animals, some birds, some ants, some crocodiles, some reptiles. And you see, these animals that has a part to play in a particular tribal line is looked at as sacred. You don't kill, even if it's a snake, right? You honor it because they have a part to play in your ancestral history. And so stories are powerful because, in when you ask every African tribe, any tribal group, the history of their roots, where they have emerged from. Some will say we have come from the sky, some from the sea, some will say we have come from the forest, some we have come from stones, from a river, we have come from maybe a mountain. And that's why the usage of the word animistic sometimes is appropriate. But it cannot describe the totality of African traditional religion. Right? And so the type of story that you tell determines your life. For example, in the secularist world, where they think that man was created from an animal, monkeys, he emerged, right? The evolution story. You see, so if you have such a story, how will you treat human beings? Like monkeys, like animals. And that's why we are taught in our colleges, man is an animal. But the Bible gives it very different story. Man is created in the image and likeness of God. And so these beginning stories are so important. Why? Because it determines the way you see your world, the way even you value yourself, the way you treat other human beings, and then the way you see everything that surrounds you. And that's why in my book, Understanding Africa Problem from the Roots to the Fruits becomes so important. Because you cannot understand people from the fruits. Now, it's like I said, it's like a tree with so many fruits. And you rightly said from Galatians that what you sow is what you reap. And you cannot escape from that. If you sow poverty, you cannot reap riches or prosperity. And so if people are in poverty, it's not enough for you to look at the poverty alone without going down to understand what have been sown. What might have been sown is the real cause for poverty. If you see people are homeless, you don't just examine the homelessness and then you think, let's give them homes. That solve their problems. No. What have they sown to create this poverty? Apart from maybe disasters that do happen, that and havoc, that occasional calamities that do happen. You see, when people are in perpetual problems, I think you should examine their problem from the roots rather than from the fruits. For example, in Africa, the greatest killer of Africans is malaria. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to solve problems of malaria and you think you can solve it from the fruits, what do? You start to give mosquito-treated nets, thinking that when people have mosquito-treated nets, they can escape from malaria. And there are many places mosquito-treated nets have been distributed. And these same people are highly afflicted with malaria. Why? Yes, mosquito-treated net will just give a temporal sort of solution, but not a permanent thing. And you know, some of these mosquito-treated nets in Africa, because of WORLDVIEW, people have used it to go fishing.
Wow.
So you think you are using it for people to sleep in and then avoid mosquitoes. People see it from a different perspective. Oh, this net can be used to catch fish. You see, that's a WORLDVIEW problem. So if you don't know this WORLDVIEW problem, and you think, let's just give mosquito-treated nets, right? Some even get it, and they sell it. So you want to solve the problem. The problem of poverty, what to eat, is so critical that if you can sell it for some few cents or some money, he will sell it to get money to go and then feed himself or herself. Wow. So you see, if you don't understand the WORLDVIEW from the roots, and you think it's just a fruit solution, you will be putting a whole lot of resources in terms of even monetary resources, loans, grants, thinking that the problem will be solved. But at the end of it, you come to realize that the problem has rather increased. And instead of solving it, it has even impoverished people. Right. That's why I don't think grants or loans or free things, giving people free things, rather impoverish them. For example, most of our governments, our politicians, I will do this, I will do this, I will give you this, I will build this for you, I will construct your roads, I will construct your gutters. Now you see, if you do that, what you are creating within the society is that people will do nothing because government will do it for us. So come to Accra, you will see wonderful, very expensive buildings in certain communities. But you look at the road that leads to these buildings. For years, they still wait that government will construct a road for us. The people who are living in these communities are rich people. They can contribute something just to reconstruct their road, to make it more travelable. They will never do it because government will do it for us. So government constructs, gutters for people, and they throw, all rubbish in, sand, and these gutters are filled. When it rains, like we're experiencing nowadays, look at the devastation. Look at the overflow of rainwater entering to buildings, killing people, and then carrying vehicles away. Then you ask yourself, what type of people are you talking about? You think by doing it for them, because if government has contracted gutters for you, you have a responsibility. Just unchoke the gutters. No government will do it. So giving or promising people to give them free things rather impoverish people. Because people need to take responsibility. People need to take ownership of their communities. But in Africa, poor people will not even train people, will not teach people how to be responsible as far as their environment, as far as their bodies, as far as even families are concerned. Government is promising everything. Father Christmas, they'll give everything. And so people are so irresponsible. And you see, that's what the gods do. The gods, the smaller gods of Africa, that's what they do everything. They provide everything. And that's why this is a worldview problem. You go to churches, you just listen to the way people pray. God, do this. God, go here. God, come here. God, kill. God, do that. So they are instructing and commanding God as if he is their small boy. Meanwhile, that God they are talking about, the Bible clearly says, lives in you. How can you command something in you? Are you crazy? But that's what people are doing, because they see God outside themselves. Like the smaller gods who are commanded, who can be bribed, who can be instructed to do havoc to the enemy. And they do. And they bring this mindset into the church. And they think they can treat God like the smaller gods. And so there is a lot of religiosity. That's why my book, African Religiosity. If you don't understand the religiosity of Africa, you cannot understand the development of Africa. Why development has waited for all these years. It is a problem of world view. We need a new orientation, a new mindset, a renewing of the mind for the African to come to himself. First, accept himself or herself as valued, person with dignity, someone. And if you're a Christian, Christ in you. And if Christ is in you, then I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. If Christ is in you, you know that he who is in you is greater than he that is in the world. So fear, right? It's not part of you. Fear of God, fear of the enemy, fear of witches, fear of demons. It's not your portion. As many live in fatalistic mindset and they think, Government will do this, government will do that. Now you come to say, oh, I have a role to live in a clean environment. I have a role to eat well. I have a role to exercise, to keep fit. I have a role to fix the little problems that I encounter. I don't have to wait for outside resources. We need a new mindset, a new orientation. And that's why worldview issues become so important, because people are treating problems in Africa from the fruit. What do you see? The fruit: poverty, hunger, deprivations. You see wars. You see calamities, evil. These are fruit problems. All of them have a root problem. And that's why you should solve the problem from the root instead of from the fruit. But NGOs and governmental agencies think, what do you see? Oh, you are hungry, so give them food. Or they see you are naked, give them. Now people become dependent on you to get food all the time. Depend on you to bring clothes. Even the roads that they have to take care. No, government will take care. So they build in Africa, they build bridges. You can't imagine the type of engineers we have. Within not years, months, you see the road constructed, deteriorating. Wow. So we have a big problem. You cannot talk of development without talking or discussing worldview issues. You cannot talk about progress, prosperity, success without understanding worldview issues. And I believe that you cannot talk about medicine, for example, business, or police, or you cannot talk about civil servant. And you see, worldviews are not part of the curriculum. Why? Because people don't see it as important. That's what I'm saying, that for you as a medical student, now if you become a medical doctor, the African man you are going to treat, his perception about sickness, right, is very different. He's thinking about the gods, he's thinking about the witches who have afflicted, he's thinking about evil. Then you are talking about paracetamol, or you are talking about, yes, you get your prescription, but the heart and mind is out. From the doctor, he will visit, the fetish priest, he will visit the malam, he will visit prayer camp. Yes, prayer camps. So they think malaria, even malaria, has nothing to do with mosquitoes. It has to do with an attack from witches, an attack from the demons. Someone will not exercise. This person is getting fat and fat and fat. Instead of realizing that, oh, I have to do something about my health, because I own this body and God created me special. So you have to take charge, exercise it, eat well, right? Even the water you drink, take care. No. You drink anyhow, eat anyhow, and then will not exercise. And then when he's sick, he say, I'm under attack. What kind of mindset is that? And it's all worldview. So if you doctors don't have this understanding, you look at sickness purely from the scientific perspective. If it is scientific, for me, I will not have problem. You see it from the secularist perspective. In the end, yes, there's a lot of doctors, but sicknesses are multiplying. Why? Because if you don't understand the core, the root causes of sicknesses, as far as the African is concerned.
Wow, this is very, very, very insightful. If you just joined us, please like, comment, start a watch party, share with friends to listen to this discussion, which is very, very, very insightful. As Christians, as people of this continent, we have to take responsibilities of our actions. Every single thing we sow, we are going to reap it. And this reminds me of the Chinese proverb that says that give a hungry man fish, and he'll be satisfied for a day. Teach a hungry man, how to fish, and that will change his life. But then there is a third dimension that makes a transformation to our thinking. That if you teach a hungry man new ways of fishing, to come out to think of new ways he has to fish, it will change his life forever. And I think that it's high time that Africans start to think differently about the way we want to develop our world, not to depend on someone, but to really understand that as people created in the image of God, God has given us a charge over the environment, to rule over the fish, over every single thing. We have to take charge. I think most of the times that is something even most Christians do not neglect, do not really take attention to. That our environment is something that God has given us to take holistic charge of it, to make sure that everything goes on as good as how God says that it was good when He created the earth. So it's a big issue that we need to have a look at. And even more profound is how people even perceive about the issues of where resources being come from, how resources are being managed. That alone can tell you the worldviews we hold. Because if we are able to define where resources are coming from, that it's not only coming from natural resources, but we as humans, created in the image of God, have those creative abilities to change, make development. I think that would really improve our lives. And this really tells us that the causes or the roots of poverty is not only providing someone with money. Yes, money is good, but then it has to do with our thinking. Our thinking is very important. All right. So doctor, now we've known all these things about solving poverty. We realize that these worldviews are like roots. So when you take a tree, you have the roots, you have the trunk, you have the branches, you have the fruits, and so you have the worldviews representing as the roots of the tree. You have the behaviors, values, trunks, branches. Can you tell us the worldviews that the Bible holds, the biblical worldviews? If someone is holding a biblical worldview, so what kind of attitudes, behaviors will we see in that person? What advantage does someone holding a biblical worldview have in contrast to someone with an animistic worldview and then a secularist worldview?
Thank you. Now, having a biblical worldview is not just accepting Jesus as your Lord and personal Savior. It has to do with a total way of thinking. Your thinking, as the Bible says in 2 Corinthians, when you read from 10, verse 4 and 5, it talks about a battle. And the battle you are confronted with had to do with the mind. And what the scripture says is that what we are to do as teachers, as preachers, as pastors, is to take minds captive. Take minds captive and submit it to the Lordship of Jesus Christ. What that means that, you see, as I've quoted already, as a man thinketh, so is he. Yeah. You see, your thinking should be totally based on the Bible. The Bible says, for 3 times Jesus was asked one question: of all the commands, which one is the greatest? And for 3 times, the answer has been the same. You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And so if we claim to love God, that word all, that's why we teach holistic ministry. Right? You don't divide life. Life is one. But every portion of it, every part of it is so important. Why? The God we serve is not interested in a quarter of my heart, part of me. No. If you say that you love God, then it should be comprehensive. Love Him with all your mind. What does that mean? As I've already indicated, it means that just as Jesus did when He came on earth, He had a purpose. And that purpose was to do the will of the Father. And you can see that from Jesus' life. There was not a single thing He did without, obeying the Father. It was totally the Father's will of the Father. Even to the point of death. He said, not my will, may your will be done. And so, if you submit your mind totally to Christ, it also means that your will is totally submitted to him. And what that means is that all your life you have a focus, and that's why we've taught that topic. Our target, our goal is his glory. So in your work, you want to glorify him. In my marriage, I want to glorify him. In my teaching, I want to glorify him. So you see that, like Paul, you don't have a life of yourself. All your life, your thinking, your behavior, your actions is to glorify God. Now, this does not come ordinarily. It takes a lot of training, orientations, a lot of nurturing, mentoring for you to be totally submitted to Christ. What that means is that, you see, you teach for application. That's why always we end with application, because people just know the theory. They don't know the practice. Christians, most Christians in Africa, they just know the theory. And that's why the African church has been described as 1 mile wide by 1 inch deep. Everywhere you go, you see the churches. Everywhere they are scattered. In our small community here, you have about 30 churches. And they are all over across the continent, apart from the northern Africa. They are everywhere. But how can highly spiritual people be so corrupt? Hating one another, pulling one another down, destroying one another, and yet speaking in tongues. Many churches are doing unimaginable things in the name of God. Many so-called men of God are doing incredible things that goes to dishonor the name of God. But they have the Bible on top of it all. We see, and so we need a new breed of people, young people like you, who would now understand God from all aspects of life. How to apply biblical principles or kingdom principles and values in every area of life. Now that is the starting point. Now if you do that, then now your actions, because that's why we talk about roots. Roots have to do with beliefs, belief systems. And that's why I am so much concerned about African traditional religion, because that's the roots of Africa problems. Even though part of the religion is so good, because it gives us some orientations that are so wonderful. But I'm concerned about the lies that Satan has put into our culture. If I believe the lies can be replaced with the biblical truth, I've said it, now I'm going to say Africa can even lead the world. But how does that happen? It is only when we are willing to take away or to disabuse our minds from the lies in our culture. And if you are taken away, then you have to replace it with something. That's why I use the glass. You remove the glass. If you leave your eyes like this, it will see, right? Yeah. But you see the natural. Yeah. And the natural is well explained by the secularists. Yeah. Right? Yeah. The natural is explained by the secularists. They try to explain the natural. That's why after removing the dark glasses, the animistic glass, leaving your eyes to see the reality is good. But then you need another glass that I call the biblical glass. Now you start to see life from God's perspective. You start to see human beings as God sees people. You start to see work not as a curse, but as dignified. Right? You start to see your environment as something critical that God has given us to take care of. You see, your wife not as a lesser person because she's a woman, but also as special. You treat her with respect and dignity. And your children, you value them. You don't become the kakai, or when you are going home, children run away. You rather want to come and embrace you. You start to see people in your community as people who are so special, regardless of their religion, or regardless of their social status. So you see, allowing Christ to rule all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength gives you a totally different way of seeing things or seeing your world. And for me, that is what I mean by the biblical worldview. And of course, it will impact your physical life. It will impact your marital life, your children. It will impact your social life, right? You will not be arrogant and proud because maybe you have a status. You respect people. You want to serve them in every capacity you find yourself. Your perception about people, human beings, regardless of their tribal orientation, becomes so critical because they are all valued. Your perception about ideas also changes. Wisdom, right? And so you always want to learn. You don't just keep the little you have and think you know it all. From children, you want to learn something. From your other colleagues, you want to learn from them. Your superiors want to learn. And people of no value, you want to learn from them. That's what Jesus did. That's why he spent time with the Pharisees and Sadducees, even though he knew these were their religious orientation. And your spiritual life also be imparted. And the highest form of your spirituality, it's not just praying and going to church. You always focus on God's glory. You want to glorify him. You want to do his will. Now, if you have all of this, you cannot fail as a child of God. Because then he who is in you is ruling your life. He determines your perception. He determines your life in terms of your likes and dislikes, your values and your principles. And the principles, just as the in the Western world, in England, in the US, right, have learned, even though they don't go to church now, many have lost their biblical foundation, but they have the principles. And that's why they cannot fail. They continue to be better than us. Because the principle of hard work is part of now their culture. Honesty is part of the culture. Having compassion, love your neighbor is part of them. So anytime there's a disaster or there is an epidemic, they want to give aid, they want to support us. The people who give us, they are not the rich people. It's part of their social orientation that, someone is sick, someone is drowning, someone is naked, someone is hungry, give them food. So now Americans, some, not all of them anyway, will want to do that because they have a compassion for people, right? So even though many don't go to church, they still have the principles. Some of these principles. What about us? We go to church as never before. The churches are full from Monday to Sunday, and we have been kept in a warehouse. You don't move out. You have to be kept in a building, praying, worshiping, praising God. Fasting and all of that, all the orientations. We are doing it in the church. And yet, these same people, when they come out, they are the same people who are wicked, selfish, greedy, corrupt, very arrogant and proud. We don't have the values, even though we are so religious. So you see, there's a dichotomy here where people live two life. What they call the spiritual world and the secular world. But in Christ, all life is one. You can't live two different lives. Because the God, as I showed, the God of science is also the God of devotion. The God of ethics, right? It's also the God of bread. Every aspect of life concerns him. That's the God we serve. Right? And that's why we cannot divide our lives into spiritual because if your whole life is have one king, Jesus, you want to obey him. Wherever you find yourself. In politics, you want to obey him. Right? In your work, As a medical officer, you want to obey him. As a nurse, you want to obey him. As a teacher, I want to obey him. But if you don't have these attributes, and just because you go to church, or you have a Christian name, or because you are in a choir, or because you have a title as a archbishop, bishop, apostle, pastor, then already you are finished. Because that it's not about titles. When Christ appears, how many are like him? And we should be like him wherever we find ourselves. That's what the Bible says. We are ambassadors. You represent him. We can't fail. So that's the big problem. People are good in speaking it, in preaching it, in teaching it, but not in living it.
Wow. This is very, 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 very interesting. And we've learned so much that as Christians, it's just not enough to be claimed as Christians, just a title. No. There's more to that. That once we are born again, once we have a regenerated heart, we need to go on to be renewed in our minds and love God in every area, with our heart, with our soul, with our mind, with all our strength, with every part of our being. This is how Paul puts it in Romans 12 verse 2, that do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. So the renewal is an effort, a daily intentional effort that we need to take, of obeying God in every area, not in one area of reading our Bible, praying every day, but in every area. In our health sector, what do we do as a student? What do we do as a teacher, as a banker, as a politician? Wherever we find ourselves, we should be intentional about obeying and applying God's word in our lives, about loving our neighbors, also about serving. This is a comprehensive worldview that changes our life and brings about development, in contrast with dynamism mindset, the secularist mindset. This is very, very, very holistic. And so that you talked about how the churches, we are coming together as a church and all those things. I think that we should just touch a little bit on how do we as a church focus on being intentional in discipling nations with culture. How are we able to, because it looks as if now there is this thing that we are supposed to go out and evangelize, win souls for Christ, go to heaven. But then there are other aspects in other areas, like art, like music, like all these things are left blank. How should we as a church engage in this? Can you shed just a brief light?
Yeah. You see, the Reformers, when they broke away from the Roman Catholic Church, they were so intentional. They were so conscious to bring about transformation in their societies, in their workplaces, in their various domains. So for them, they have what they call you scatter, but then you meet. Sunday is a day of worship. For what? Equip the saints. Monday to Saturday, you scatter them. After equipping them, right, you scatter them to their domains or their vocations, their families, agriculture, to their business, to their economics, to their politics. That is where real Christianity can be demonstrated, not in a church room. So they gather on Sunday and scatter from Monday to Saturday. But what do we find in Africa? We gather and keep them in warehouse the whole week. Some pastors are so selfish that they think when their members go out, they'll be grabbed by others. And it's true, some are doing it that way. And so we lose the critical role that, for example, music plays. Now, musicians in Ghana and other places have more influence on people than the church. Sports like soccer or football has influence on people than the church. And That's why you see worldviews penetrate cultures. They penetrate cultures because you see we are talking about people, and now you can understand the role of music. What the church should have done is to see the various giftings, talents, abilities that their members have. How do you encourage it? How do you nurture it? How do you help them to be stars? Because the current stars, we have many of them, there are very, very few Christian musicians who can influence. But whilst the secularists have, thousands and sometimes millions of people following them. And so it has come to a time the church should realize what concerns God. What concerns God is not only the spiritual. God is concerned. Samaritan, we have groups, young people who are interested in drama. We have some who are interested in music. We have some who are interested in learning other skills apart from the spiritual prayer. We are encouraging them because drama is now extensively used to disciple nations. Music is used to disciple nations, right? Soccer is used to disciple nations. In our current world, if you are in this, formally, even if you want to go into law practice, they say, no, that one is not for Christians, so, because they are liars. Yeah. And so, if you don't enter into it, law practice